I don't think I'll ever go camping again. Not after what happened that night. It started as a simple trip, just me and 3 of my best friends. Jake, Ryan, and Chris. We had planned a weekend getaway deep in the Appalachian Mountains, away from civilization, away from work, stress, and, ironically, fear. Jake had found the spot, some off-the-grid clearing he claimed was untouched nature. No cell service, no tourists, just us and the wilderness. Sounded perfect. We arrived around late afternoon, set up our tents, and cracked open some beers as the sun dipped below the trees. The forest around us was eerily quiet. No distant campers, no hum of a highway, just the occasional rustling in the bushes and the whispering wind. By midnight, the fire was dying down, and Ryan decided he needed to take a piss. He wandered off a few feet from the site, flashlight in hand. A minute passed, then 2. "Ryan," I called. No answer. Chris stood up, grabbing his flashlight. "Dude probably tripped over a root. I'll check." He vanished into the dark. A minute later, we heard a sharp rustling. Then silence. Jake and I exchanged looks. "No way they're messing with us," he muttered, grabbing his hunting knife. "Stay here." He stepped into the black void beyond our firelight. I sat alone, waiting. Every minute stretched longer, my stomach twisting. Where the hell were they? Then footsteps, but not from where they had gone. Slow, deliberate steps crunched through the leaves, circling the camp. I grabbed my flashlight and swung it in the direction of the sound. My breath caught in my throat. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing. It wasn't Ryan. It wasn't Chris. And it damn sure wasn't Jake. The figure stood just beyond the tree-line, half hidden by the shadows of the towering pines. My heart hammered against my ribs as I tried to make out any details, but my flashlight barely illuminated his face. "Ryan," I called out, even though I knew it wasn't him. No response. He just stood there, motionless, watching. I felt cold sweat bead on my forehead. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. It wasn't just the silence. It was the way this person or thing was standing, unnaturally still, like it didn't even breathe. I reached for my knife, gripping it so hard my knuckles went white. "Where are my friends?" My voice barely held steady. Then he moved. Not forward, not toward me. He stepped backward, deeper into the forest. But the way he moved, it wasn't like a normal person walking away. His body glided, his feet barely lifting off the ground, as if he were being pulled by something unseen. The flashlight flickered, and in that split second of darkness, he disappeared. A chill raced up my spine. This wasn't right. None of this was right. Then I heard it. From deep in the woods, where my friends had gone. A low, strangled whisper. Faint, barely audible, but I knew what it said. "Help me, Ryan." I swallowed the lump in my throat and stepped away from the firelight. Every part of my brain screamed, "Don't go in there." But what choice did I have? My friends were missing, and something was out there with them. I took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness. The second I left the glow of the dying fire, the woods swallowed me whole. The air was different here, thick, almost suffocating. The trees loomed taller, their twisted branches reaching down like skeletal fingers. My flashlight flickered as I scanned the area, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Ryan," I called, my voice barely above a whisper. Silence. Then a crunch. Close. I swung the light toward the sound, and for a fraction of a second, I saw something between the trees. Not Ryan. Not Chris. My breath hitched. It wasn't just some man. Now that I could see it clearly, I realized it didn't look human at all. The limbs were too long, the posture slightly off, like it was learning how to stand. The face, couldn't see a face. Just a gaping void where one should be. Then it moved. Fast. I staggered backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. Whatever it was, it disappeared again, melting into the blackness of the forest. Then a voice, but not from where the thing had been. "Help, please." Ryan's voice, weak, strained. I turned toward the sound, gripping the knife so tight my fingers went numb. My flashlight shook as I moved forward, following the voice. Then, in the beam of my light, I saw him, Ryan, on the ground. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. His eyes flickered open, locking onto mine. Don't. His lips barely moved. Don't what? I whispered, kneeling beside him. His pupils dilated in pure terror as he looked over my shoulder. Don't turn around. A shiver ran down my spine. I felt it, the warmth of breath right behind me. A wave of pure dread washed over me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Something was behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat of its breath, the way the air shifted around it. My body screamed at me to run, but my muscles locked up, frozen in place. Ryan's hand clamped onto my wrist, his grip weak but desperate. His wide, terrified eyes said everything. Don't turn around. The whisper of breath behind me stopped. The forest went dead silent. No wind, no rustling, nothing. Then a sound. Not a growl, not a snarl. Clicking noise, deep and rhythmic like bones snapping in rapid succession. It was waiting for me to look. I clenched my jaw and forced my voice out, barely above a whisper. Can you stand? Ryan gave the faintest shake of his head. He was too weak, too drained. I had no choice. I had to carry him. I slid my arm under his shoulders, trying not to make any sudden movements. My fingers dug into the dirt as I prepared to lift. The clicking stopped. The silence was worse. Then a voice, right against my ear. You're not supposed to be here. A cold shudder rattled through my entire body. The voice was wrong. Like someone speaking through a busted radio, warped and unnatural. I snapped. Adrenaline took over, and I grabbed Ryan, yanking him to his feet as I bolted forward. He let out a weak grunt, barely able to keep up, but I didn't stop. We crashed through the trees, branches whipping against my arms, the flashlight bouncing wildly in my grip. I didn't look back, couldn't, but I could hear it. Footsteps. No, too many footsteps. As if multiple things were running, moving in perfect unison, mirroring our pace. Then I saw it. A dim glow through the trees. The fire. The campsite. Jake and Chris were there. I could see them standing, flashlights raised, their faces confused and alarmed. Run! I screamed. They didn't hesitate. I felt something cold skim the back of my neck as I dove into the clearing. The second we crossed into the light of the fire, everything stopped. No footsteps, no clicking, just silence. Jake grabbed my arm. His voice panicked. Dude, what the hell happened? I turned, gasping for breath. The forest behind us, it was empty. No movement, no sign of it. But I knew it was still there, watching, waiting, and worst of all, it let us go. For now, we didn't sleep that night. Jake kept throwing nervous glances at the tree-line, gripping his hunting knife so tight his knuckles were white. Chris had gone dead silent, staring into the fire like if he looked away, something would snatch him. Ryan was in the worst shape. He was shivering, even though the fire was warm. His skin was pale, almost gray. Whatever had happened to him out there, whatever had been near us, it had done something to him. I sat next to him, trying to keep my voice steady. Ryan, man, what the hell happened? His bloodshot eyes flicked toward me, empty and hollow. I don't know, he rasped. I waited, hoping he'd say more, and after a long pause, he did. I got lost, he whispered. 1 second, I was just taking a piss. The next, I wasn't in the same forest anymore. Jake frowned. What do you mean? Ryan swallowed hard. The trees changed, taller, twisted, and the ground was wrong. It was soft, like stepping on rotted meat. He shuddered. Then I heard footsteps. A chill crawled up my spine. Ryan clenched his jaw, like he didn't even want to say it out loud. It wasn't just one thing. There were many. His voice cracked. They moved like shadows, but they weren't shadows. Couldn't look at them right. Every time I tried, they shifted. Chris exhaled sharply. Jesus. Ryan's breathing hitched. Then one of them spoke to me. He clenched his fists. It whispered something, and I felt it inside my skull. He looked at me, his eyes desperate. It said, You broke the rule. I felt the hair on my arms stand up. What rule? Ryan just shook his head. I don't know. But when I asked, it got angry. The forest behind us let out a sudden creak. A long, groaning sound, like something massive shifting among the trees. We all went rigid. Jake cursed under his breath. We need to get the hell out of here. I nodded. At first light, nobody argued, but deep down I had a sinking feeling. Something told me it wouldn't let us go so easily. We waited for dawn. The fire burned low, casting long, flickering shadows around the clearing. None of us spoke. None of us slept. We just sat there listening, watching, waiting. Every so often, we'd hear something move out in the trees. A shift in the underbrush, a crack of a branch. But every time we swung a flashlight in that direction, nothing. It was toying with us. Ryan hadn't said a word in over an hour. He just sat close to the fire, knees drawn to his chest, staring into the flames with that same haunted look in his eyes. Then, around 4 a.m., the forest changed. It was subtle at first. The usual night sounds. Crickets, rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. All stopped. The air turned thick, heavy. Chris was the first to react. Do you feel that? He whispered. Yeah. We all did. It was like standing in a room where something else was breathing with you. Like we weren't alone anymore. Then the footsteps started. Slow, deliberate, circling the campsite. I grabbed my knife, gripping it so tight my hands shook. Jake raised his flashlight and scanned the treeline. Nothing. Then the smell hit us. Rot, wet, decayed meat, seeped into the air, thick and nauseating. I gagged, covering my mouth. Then Ryan spoke, but his voice wasn't his. Don't run. We all turned to him, startled. He was staring straight ahead, pupils blown wide, like he wasn't even in his own body anymore. Ryan, I reached for him, but he jerked away. His lips moved again, but the voice that came out wasn't his. You broke the rule. My stomach dropped. Jake stumbled back, muttering, What the? But before he could finish, Ryan's entire body locked up. His back arched, his hands clenched into fists, and his mouth opened in a silent scream. Then, just as suddenly, he collapsed. Silence. None of us moved. None of us breathed. Then the forest exhaled. A long, slow rush of wind that sent a shiver down my spine. And just like that, the night sounds returned. Crickets, wind in the leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. Like nothing had happened. Jake was the first to move. He grabbed Ryan and shook him. Ryan, wake up. Ryan gasped awake, eyes wild. We need to leave. Now. We didn't argue. We grabbed what little we could, shoved it into our bags, and bolted for the truck. We didn't look back. Not even when we heard something move in the trees behind us. Something that didn't follow. Something that just watched. We didn't stop driving until we hit the main road. We didn't speak for hours. And even now, I don't know what happened in those woods. But I know one thing. Ryan was right. We broke a rule. And whatever was out there, it let us go. This time, we made it back to civilization. But whatever we left behind in those woods, it didn't leave us. Ryan didn't speak the entire drive back. His skin was still pale, his breathing shallow, his hands trembling in his lap. Every time I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, I saw something wrong in his eyes, like he wasn't fully here anymore. It took a week before he finally talked. We were at Jake's place, all of us sitting around his kitchen table, drinking whiskey and trying to pretend we weren't shaken to our core. But Ryan wasn't drinking. He sat there, silent, staring at his hands like they didn't belong to him. Then he whispered, I remember what the rule was. The room went still. Jake slowly set down his glass. What? Ryan looked up, his face hollow and tired. The thing in the woods. It told me before I blacked out. He swallowed hard. It said, You don't speak after the forest goes silent. A cold chill crawled up my spine. Chris muttered, What the hell does that mean? Ryan exhaled shakily. Think about it. When did everything start going wrong? I felt my stomach twist. When the forest got quiet, Ryan nodded. That was the moment we should have shut up. No talking, no whispering, not even a breath too loud. His fingers dug into the table. But we didn't. We panicked. We asked each other if we felt it. We spoke, and it hurt us. Nobody said a word, because deep down we knew he was right. Ryan let out a hollow laugh. That's why it let us go. Not because we escaped, because it knows we'll break the rule again. He glanced toward the window, his face unreadable. And next time, it won't let us leave. A heavy silence settled over the room. Jake was the first to stand. Screw this. He grabbed his keys, shaking his head. I'm done. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. It's over. Chris nodded quickly. Yeah, over. But Ryan didn't move. And when I looked at him, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The look in his eyes, like he could still hear it, like part of him never really left those woods. I wanted to tell myself it was over, that we were safe. But even now, months later, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night. The room is silent, too silent, and for just a second, I swear I hear a clicking noise right outside my window. I tried to move on. I really did. I went back to work, stopped talking about the trip, ignored the nightmares, but no matter how much I pretended, I felt it. Something was wrong. Started small, little things. The woods behind my house felt deeper than they used to. At night, I'd catch glimpses of movement from the corner of my eye, but when I turned, nothing was there. Then the real signs started. I'd be in bed, half asleep, and suddenly the crickets outside would stop, just like before. A thick, unnatural silence would settle over everything. The air would feel heavy, and in that silence, I'd hear it. Not footsteps, not whispers, clicking, slow, deliberate, right outside my window. The first time, I told myself it was just a raccoon. The second time, I told myself I imagined it. The third time, I sat up, heart pounding, and listened. Click, 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 right against the glass. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then my phone vibrated on the nightstand. A text from Ryan. All it said was, "Don't talk, don't move." My stomach dropped. He knew. He'd been hearing it too. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window, barely breathing. The clicking sound didn't stop. It just waited. It was testing me. Would I break the rule again? Seconds stretched into minutes. My chest burned from holding my breath. My hands clenched the sheets so hard they ached. Then it stopped. The sounds of the night returned all at once. A wave of relief washed over me, but I didn't move until the sun started creeping over the horizon. I grabbed my phone and texted Ryan back. "What do we do?" His reply came instantly. "I don't think there's anything we can do. That was 3 weeks ago. Jake and Chris won't answer my calls. Ryan stopped responding 2 days ago. And last night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I heard something new. Not clicking, not whispering, breathing, slow, deep, right outside my bedroom door. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. And eventually it faded. But I know the truth now. We didn't leave it in the woods. It followed us home. I haven't left my house in days. I don't sleep. I don't answer my phone. I barely eat. Because I know the moment I let my guard down, it will be here. Ryan is gone. I don't mean missing. I mean gone. His phone is disconnected. His apartment, empty. No signs of struggle, no signs he ever even lived there. It's like he just vanished. Jake and Chris won't talk to me. Jake blocked my number. Chris left town. I don't blame them, because no matter how far they run, it won't matter. I think we're all marked, and soon we'll all disappear. The final night last night, it happened again. The silence, the heavy air, the clicking. This time it wasn't outside my window. It was inside the house. I sat frozen in bed, my pulse pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The clicking moved. Slow, careful steps circling my room. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then a whisper, right next to my ear. "It's your turn." Every hair on my body stood on end. My vision blurred from sheer terror. I stayed still, silent, but it didn't leave. The air pressed down on me, suffocating, crushing. The weight of something unseen, something that should not exist. I felt it lean closer, felt the whisper of breath on my skin. Waiting, testing. I thought I was going to die. Then, as suddenly as it came, it was gone. The crickets returned. The house felt normal again. But I know the truth. It wasn't mercy. It wasn't a mistake. It's playing with me. I won't last much longer. Soon I'll be like Ryan. Gone. Forgotten. Swallowed by the silence. So if you're reading this, if you ever find yourself in the woods, and the night suddenly goes quiet, don't talk, don't move, and whatever you do, don't break the rule.